The room buzzed with low murmurs and the shuffling of papers as the officers gathered for the morning briefing. Captain Maya Johnson sat quietly near the back, her posture straight but unassuming. The projector flickered to life, displaying a roster of names. One after another, male officers whose faces were nodding with confidence, exchanging greetings and pats on their backs. When her name appeared, it was barely glanced at, a line on the screen rather than a focal point. The colonel leading the briefing didn't even pause to acknowledge her presence. Instead, he moved on swiftly, directing congratulations toward others for recent commendations and assignments. Maya's eyes remained steady on the screen, a flicker of resolve hidden behind her calm exterior. Around her, the dismissive tone of the room was palpable, an undercurrent of indifference toward her contributions, a silent but clear message that her efforts were invisible. She was neither included in the casual jokes nor invited into the side conversations. Her uniform, impeccably tailored, bore the insignia of her rank, yet it seemed to carry no weight here. The subtle glances, the averted eyes, the exclusion. It was all a familiar script she had learned to read long ago. Outside the military installation, in the heart of Atlanta, Maya's life was a study in contrasts. The sharp edges of the base faded into the vibrant, often chaotic rhythms of the city she called home. In her modest apartment, walls lined with photographs and mementos, Maya balanced the demands of service with the responsibilities she bore as a daughter, a sister, and an activist. Her evenings were often spent at community meetings or organizing local outreach programs, fighting battles of a different kind, against inequality, against injustice, against the invisibility that seemed to shadow her both in uniform and in life. Her phone buzzed quietly on the kitchen counter, displaying a message from her mother. "Don't forget your meeting tonight. The neighborhood needs you." Maya smiled faintly, a reminder that her fight extended beyond the barracks. She moved to the window, looking out over the city skyline, the lights twinkling like distant stars. Here, away from the rigid lines of military protocol, she was a force of resilience and hope, a woman determined to carve out a space for herself and those like her. Flashbacks flickered in her mind, sharp and vivid. She was back in the dense jungle of a covert operation months earlier, the air thick with tension and the hum of unseen dangers. Maya's voice had been calm but commanding as she directed her team through an ambush. Her quick decisions had saved lives, her own included, and yet, when the mission ended, accolades were handed out to others. Her name was barely mentioned in the after-action reports, buried beneath layers of bureaucratic oversight and unspoken biases. One memory stood out, a moment when she had shielded a fellow soldier from an explosion, taking the brunt of the blast herself. The pain had been sharp, but the pride in her team's survival eclipsed it. Still, the recognition she deserved was withheld, a silent casualty of the systemic disregard for a black woman in her position. This injustice was a wound that had never quite healed, a fuel that now burned quietly beneath her composed exterior. As the briefing continued, Maya's thoughts drifted back to the present. The faces around her were a blur of indifference and skepticism. Yet, beneath it all, she sensed a stirring, an opportunity waiting to be claimed, a moment when her valor might finally pierce the veil of invisibility. The dismissive glances, the whispered doubts, they would not define her story. Her commanding officer's voice cut through the room, outlining upcoming assignments and the need for a leader on a critical mission. Maya's heart quickened. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to step from the shadows into the light. But even as the opportunity was named, the skepticism in the room was palpable. Questions whispered just loud enough to be heard. Can she handle it? Is she ready for this responsibility? Maya met those doubts with a steady gaze. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, both external and internal. The institutional barriers, the biases that had long kept her sidelined, were formidable. But she also knew her own strength, forged through years of perseverance and quiet defiance. The briefing ended with no fanfare, the officers filing out with casual disregard for her presence. Yet Maya remained seated a moment longer, gathering her resolve. She rose, her steps deliberate and sure, moving toward the exit with the weight of her unacknowledged past and the promise of a future yet unwritten. Outside, the midday sun cast long shadows across the base, the heat shimmering above the pavement. Maya paused, taking a deep breath of the warm air, feeling the pulse of the city beyond the gates echo in her veins. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path steep and winding, but she was ready to lead, to break through the silence and claim her place. Her mind returned to the faces of those she served with, the ones who doubted, who overlooked her. They saw only a captain, a name on a roster. But Maya carried within her the stories of survival, the unyielding spirit of a black woman who had fought battles both seen and unseen. Her quiet determination was a promise. To herself, to her community, and to the generations who would follow. She pulled out a small, worn notebook from her jacket pocket, flipping to a page where she had scribbled words of encouragement and purpose. Lines from a poem by Maya Angelou stared back at her. "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated." The words were a shield and a sword, a reminder of the resilience that had brought her this far. As she stepped into the sunlight, the noise of the base faded behind her, replaced by the vibrant hum of the city. Maya Johnson was more than a captain overlooked by her peers. She was a force of courage and conviction, ready to rise from the margins and etch her name into the annals of valor. The story of her past bravery, the covert operation where her quick thinking saved lives, yet went unrecognized, was not forgotten. It lingered like a shadow, a silent promise that her moment was coming. And when it did, Maya would be ready to shatter the barriers of bias and invisibility, proving that her valor was undeniable, her leadership unquestionable. For now, she carried her quiet strength into the uncertain hours ahead, a black woman navigating the intersecting worlds of military service and community activism. Her journey was a testament to perseverance, a beacon of hope for those who had been overlooked and underestimated. The room where she had once been invisible was now behind her, replaced by the vast horizon of possibility. Maya Johnson's story was just beginning to unfold. The orders came through just as Maya was preparing to leave for a community forum that evening. Her commanding officer's voice was crisp over the secure line, the weight of the assignment unmistakable. She was to lead a high-stakes rescue mission deep in hostile territory, a test not only of skill but of leadership under pressure. The moment she had anticipated, the opportunity to prove herself beyond the whispers and doubts, was finally here. Maya sat at her desk, the glow of the computer screen illuminating her focused face. Maps and satellite images covered the walls around her, pinned with notes and tactical details. Each detail mattered: the terrain, enemy positions, possible escape routes. Her fingers traced the lines of the map, plotting contingencies and backup plans. The mission was complex and dangerous, but Maya's mind was clear, sharp as ever. Her team was assembled reluctantly. Some faces carried skepticism, others outright resistance. Lieutenant Carter, a seasoned soldier with a history of undermining her in meetings, avoided eye contact as she outlined the plan. Corporal Jenkins muttered doubts under his breath, while Private Lee watched her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken questions about her readiness and capability. Maya's voice cut through the tension as she addressed the group, steady and commanding. "This mission will test every one of us. But I promise you, I have prepared for this. We will rely on each other, trust in our training, and execute with precision." Her words were met with a mixture of silence and reluctant nods. She knew winning their trust was as crucial as the mission itself. The days leading up to the operation were a whirlwind of preparation. Maya devoted herself to rigorous planning sessions, simulations, and coordinating with intelligence officers. Each evening, she reviewed every detail repeatedly, aware that any oversight could cost lives. Yet, beneath the surface, the doubts from her team gnawed at her confidence. She confronted not only the external dangers of the mission but the internal battle against prejudice and skepticism. During a late-night simulation exercise, Lieutenant Carter challenged her decisions openly, questioning her strategy in front of the team. "Captain, are you sure this is the best approach? We've never tried this before." The challenge hung heavy in the room, a direct affront masked as concern. Maya met his gaze without flinching. "I'm sure. This plan maximizes our chances and minimizes exposure. We move at dawn." Her tone left no room for debate, and slowly, the room settled into focused discipline. Outside the base, the city's skyline flickered against the darkening sky, a stark contrast to the tension inside the war room. Maya's thoughts wandered briefly to the community meetings she had missed, the faces counting on her beyond the uniform. Yet here, she was resolved to lead, to break the cycle of doubt and prove that her capabilities were unquestionable. The night before deployment, Maya sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the mission parameters once more. The silence was punctuated only by the hum of the ventilation system and the occasional distant call of a night guard. She allowed herself a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her here, from the overlooked captain in the briefing room to the leader entrusted with lives in the field. Her phone buzzed with a message from her younger sister. "We're all proud of you. You've got this." The words were a quiet bomb, a reminder of the personal stakes behind every decision. Maya typed back a brief thank you, then set the phone aside. Tomorrow there would be no room for doubt, only action. At first light, the team assembled in full gear, the weight of their equipment mirrored by the gravity in their expressions. Maya walked among them, checking gear, offering brief words of encouragement. The skepticism lingered but was tempered now by professionalism. As they boarded the armored vehicles, the hum of engines filled the air, engines that would carry them into hostile territory. The mission unfolded with a tense precision. Maya's leadership was tested at every turn. The unexpected ambushes, shifting enemy positions, the need to adapt swiftly. Her strategic decisions kept the team moving forward, navigating the terrain with calculated risks. When a supply convoy was trapped, Maya coordinated a daring extraction under fire, her voice steady as she directed cover and retreat. Throughout the operation, Maya's calm under pressure began to erode the doubts harbored by her team. Corporal Jenkins, who had initially been dismissive, found himself relying on her guidance during a critical moment when communications faltered. Private Lee watched as Maya moved effortlessly between roles: strategist, motivator, protector, her presence a steady anchor in chaos. Back at the base, the waiting officers monitored the mission's progress via live feed, the tension palpable. Reports filtered in of Maya's decisive actions and the team's resilience. Yet, even with undeniable success, whispers persisted, questions about whether the mission's outcome was due to luck or external support rather than her leadership. As the team returned, exhausted but victorious, the atmosphere shifted subtly. The officers who had doubted her now offered nods of acknowledgement, their respect begrudging but present. During the debriefing, Maya presented a meticulous account of the operation, highlighting both achievements and lessons learned. Her professionalism and clarity left no room for dismissal. Later, in the solitude of the locker room, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She removed her helmet, sweat mixing with the grime of battle. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, but so did a burgeoning sense of accomplishment. She had faced the skepticism head-on and emerged not just unbroken but stronger. The mission's success began to ripple through the ranks. Conversations that once whispered doubt now included her name with respect. Yet Maya knew the deeper battles remained, the systemic biases and the subtle obstacles that could undermine progress at any moment. Still, the mission had been a turning point, a demonstration of her capability that could no longer be ignored. That evening, as she prepared for another community meeting, Maya reflected on the tightrope she walked daily, between the battlefield and the neighborhood, between the expectations imposed upon her and the ones she set for herself. Her leadership on this mission was not just about survival. It was about forging a path for those who would come after her. She paused at the window, the city's lights a mosaic of hope and challenge. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but Maya's resolve was unwavering. The mission had tested her in ways she had anticipated and some she had not, but it had also revealed the strength of her leadership and courage. Her team was no longer just a group of skeptical soldiers. They were a unit bound by shared experience and respect earned in the crucible of danger. And Maya, once overlooked and underestimated, was now undeniably the leader they followed. As the night deepened, Maya opened her notebook once more, jotting down notes and reflections from the mission. The words of encouragement she had carried with her now felt more than just inspiration. They were a call to action, a reminder that resilience and leadership were inseparable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts to confront, but for this moment, Maya allowed herself to acknowledge the victory. Not just the success of the mission, but the breakthrough in perception, the first crack in the wall of bias that had long confined her. The struggle was far from over, but Maya Johnson was ready. She had faced prejudice and obstacles head-on, proving that her courage and strategic brilliance were more than enough to lead her team through the darkest of hours. The day of the formal ceremony arrived under a cloudless sky. The military base transformed into a stage of polished precision and disciplined grace. Rows of officers stood at attention, their uniforms crisp, faces solemn. Maya Johnson stood among them, the weight of anticipation pressing on her shoulders. Today was not just a recognition of a mission completed. It was a pivotal moment, an undeniable public acknowledgement of her valor. The commanding officer stepped onto the podium, the crowd falling silent. His voice, steady and authoritative, recounted the details of the recent rescue operation with a tone that left no room for doubt. He praised the leadership that had guided the team through perilous terrain, navigated ambushes with tactical brilliance, and ensured the safe extraction of all personnel. When he named Captain Maya Johnson as the architect of that success, the room erupted into applause, a sound both unfamiliar and deeply deserved. Maya's heart pounded, a mix of relief and pride flooding through her. The years of being overlooked, the quiet battles against bias and doubt, culminated in this moment of undeniable recognition. Yet beneath the applause, a deeper shift was taking place, one that challenged the very structures that had long silenced her contributions. As the ceremony continued, whispers began to circulate among the ranks. Talks not just of Maya's heroism but of the systemic injustices that had kept her in the shadows. Questions surfaced about how many others like her had been denied acknowledgement, their stories buried beneath layers of institutional bias. This moment was more than personal triumph. It was a catalyst for a broader reckoning. Maya stepped forward to receive her commendation, the medal gleaming against her uniform. The crowd's applause swelled again, but this time, it carried a note of transformation. A collective recognition that the military must confront its own flaws. Cameras flashed, capturing the image of a black woman standing tall, her dignity unshaken, her courage celebrated. Later, in a quiet room behind the scenes, Maya prepared to address the assembly. Her speech was measured yet powerful, weaving together her personal journey with a call for resilience and unity. She spoke of the barriers she had faced, the doubts she had overcome, and the importance of breaking down the walls that hinder progress. Valor knows no color, no gender, no background, Maya declared, her voice steady and clear. It is found in the courage to stand when others would falter, to lead when others hesitate, and to fight for justice even when the odds are against us. Our strength lies in our unity, in lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. Her words resonated beyond the walls of the ceremony hall, carried through broadcasts and conversations. They became a beacon for those who had felt invisible, a rallying cry for change within the armed forces and beyond. Maya's story, once a quiet undercurrent, surged into the forefront of public consciousness. In the days that followed, discussions erupted within the military's leadership circles. Reports and testimonials surfaced, shedding light on the systemic biases that had suppressed recognition for many deserving soldiers. Committees were formed, tasked with reviewing promotion practices, awards, and the culture that allowed prejudice to persist. Maya found herself at the center of this evolving dialogue, her experience a touchstone for reform. She met with senior officials, advocating for policies that ensured equal opportunity and recognition. Her voice, once marginalized, now carried the weight of authority and respect. Yet, amid the institutional shifts, Maya remained grounded. She continued her work within her community, knowing that the fight for equity extended beyond medals and ceremonies. her activism intertwined with her military service, each reinforcing the other in a shared mission of justice. One afternoon, at a local veterans center, Maya addressed a group of young recruits, diverse faces eager but uncertain. She shared her story candidly, emphasizing the power of perseverance. "You may face obstacles that seem insurmountable," she told them, "but remember that your worth is not defined by the recognition you receive, but by the courage you show every day." Among the listeners was a young lieutenant, her eyes bright with admiration. After the session, she approached Maya, expressing a quiet determination to follow in her footsteps. The encounter was a reminder that Maya's journey was not just personal but part of a larger legacy being forged. As Maya reflected on the whirlwind of change, she recognized the delicate balance between celebration and ongoing struggle. The ceremony was a milestone, but it was not the destination. The work to dismantle systemic injustice required vigilance and collective effort. In her quarters that evening, Maya reviewed the transcripts of her speech and the letters of support she had received. The words of encouragement from fellow soldiers and civilians alike underscored the impact of her message. Yet, she remained aware of the many silent stories still waiting to be heard. The military base, once a place where she had been overlooked, was now a ground of possibility. Conversations about diversity and inclusion were no longer whispers but directives. Maya's courage had sparked a movement, one that demanded accountability and fostered hope. Her reflection was interrupted by a call from her mother, whose voice carried pride and warmth. "You've made us all proud, Maya. But remember to take care of yourself too." The reminder was gentle but necessary, grounding Maya in the humanity behind the uniform. Before the day ended, Maya penned a letter to her younger sister, urging her to dream boldly and persist despite obstacles. The act was symbolic, a passing of the torch, a nurturing of hope in the next generation. As the stars shimmered outside her window, Maya felt the weight of history and the promise of the future intertwine. Her story was no longer just her own. It was a chapter in a larger narrative of courage, justice, and transformation. The path ahead remained challenging, but the public recognition she had earned was a beacon, a testament to the power of resilience and the imperative of change. Maya Johnson stood not just as a symbol of triumph, but as a catalyst for a military and a society striving toward equity and honor for all who serve. Months after the ceremony, the military base bore subtle signs of change. New posters adorned the walls, proclaiming commitments to diversity and inclusion. Training programs now included workshops on unconscious bias, and panels featuring voices from underrepresented groups became a fixture in the schedule. The atmosphere, once thick with unspoken prejudices, was shifting slowly but undeniably. Captain Maya Johnson walked these hallways with a quiet sense of purpose. Her role had evolved beyond that of a soldier. She was now a mentor, an advocate, and a catalyst for reform. Meetings with senior leadership occupied her days. Discussions centered on policy changes aimed at ensuring equal recognition and opportunity. The road was long, fraught with resistance and bureaucratic inertia, but progress was evident. In her office, Maya maintained a wall filled with letters, messages from fellow service members who had found inspiration in her journey. Some shared stories of their own struggles. Others expressed hope for a future where merit, not bias, dictated advancement. Each letter was a reminder of the ripple effect her courage had created, a testament to the power of visibility and voice. Outside the military sphere, Maya's influence extended into the community. She continued her activism, attending forums and speaking engagements, advocating for veterans' rights and social justice. The duality of her existence, soldier and activist, was a source of strength, each role enriching the other. One afternoon, Maya visited a local high school, invited to speak to a group of young women considering careers in the armed forces. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy and eager questions. Maya shared her story candidly. The setbacks, the battles both external and internal, and the hard-won victories. Her message was clear. Resilience and perseverance were as vital as skill and training. A young student raised her hand, voice trembling but determined. "How do you keep going when people don't believe in you?" Maya smiled gently, recognizing the familiar doubt. You keep going because you believe in yourself, because your dreams are bigger than the obstacles, and because every step forward helps those who come after you. The visit was one of many, each encounter reinforcing Maya's commitment to nurturing the next generation. She understood that true change required not only institutional reform but also the empowerment of individuals who would carry the torch forward. Back at the base, Maya's efforts contributed to tangible shifts. A new review board was established to ensure fair evaluation of promotions and commendations, with diverse representation mandated. Training curricula were overhauled to include histories and contributions of marginalized groups. The culture was evolving, albeit gradually, toward one of greater inclusivity. Yet, Maya remained vigilant. She knew the work was ongoing, that progress could be fragile and setbacks inevitable. The fight for equity was a marathon, not a sprint, requiring sustained dedication and courage. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Maya attended a ceremony honoring fallen soldiers. The solemnity of the occasion contrasted with the hope she carried within. Among the attendees was a young lieutenant, introduced as someone inspired by Maya's story. They spoke quietly, the lieutenant expressing gratitude and a desire to follow a similar path of service and advocacy. Maya's words were both encouragement and charge. True strength lies in lifting others, in forging paths where none existed before. Your journey will be hard, but you are not alone. Later, alone in her quarters, Maya gazed at a framed photograph of her family and the city skyline beyond her window. The journey from invisibility to influence had reshaped her life, instilling a profound sense of purpose. She reflected on the battles fought and those yet to come, understanding that her legacy would be measured not only by medals, but by the lives she touched and the barriers she helped dismantle. In the quiet of the night, she opened her well-worn notebook, pen poised above the page. The words she wrote were a promise, to herself, to her community, and to the countless others who would follow. Her story was a testament to resilience, a beacon of hope illuminating the path toward justice and equality. Captain Maya Johnson's journey was far from over. But with each step, she forged a future where valor was recognized in all its forms, and where every soldier, regardless of background, could stand proudly in the light they deserved.